Well, hey everyone, it's Sean again, and in today's video, this is part 3 of the section, the ego's uses of guilt. And in this part of this section, Jesus really gets into the thought of what that thought of guilt is, or really how to look at that thought, or that thought system, what we call the ego's thought system of guilt, and how to perceive and see the Holy Spirit's thought system. And he uses some very simplistic terms here that can be very, very helpful in making our decision for one or the other. And so it starts off, irrational thought is disordered thought. So, just thinking about the ego's thought system is that way. It's irrational because it's disordered. That whole thought system of the ego is disordered thought. There's nothing that can be counted on because there's nothing certain about it. And because it's always changing. So it's in this constant state of disorder, which we see a world, the outside world, is a reflection of that disordered thought. And so it continues, God himself orders your thought because your thought was created by him. He's not saying God orders you to think. No, it's God himself orders your thought. He gave us that. The Holy Spirit's thought system is that thought of ordered thought. It's very ordered. It just flows. There's nothing disordered about it. And we can, there's that certainty in that ordered thought because it's changeless, it's constant, it's certain, it's consistent, and because it's changeless. And so it continues, guilt feelings are always a sign that you do not know this. They also show you that you believe that you can think apart from God and want to. Every disordered thought is attended by guilt at its inception and maintained by guilt in its continuance, I should say. And so it's that, all of the disordered thoughts, the thought system of the ego, are of guilt. They started with at the inception with guilt, and they continue with guilt. That's why it's disordered. How can a thought be, or a thought system be ordered if there's always this feeling of guilt underneath all that? Even though we buried it in our mind, it may be unconscious, but think about the rise of all those disordered thoughts that are in our mind all the time. And that's where it comes from. It comes from that guilt. And guilt accompanies all of our thoughts when we are of that thought system. And so it's a great reminder to look at those two thought systems now. One is a disordered thought system. That's the thought system of the ego because it's accompanied by guilt at its inception and it's continuous. The other is the thought system, an ordered thought system, because it's a thought system of that perfect innocence, that holiness. There is no disorder in that because it is that perfect thought system, a thought system of that perfect peace, that perfect creation, so to speak. So it continues with, guilt is inescapable by those who believe they order their own thoughts and must therefore obey their dictates. So it's like, we believe, that's what we think about our thoughts. Well, this is the way I think. And even though I'm not recognizing that comes from a disordered thought system. Well, this is the way I think, this is the way I perceive, this is who I am, so I must obey those thoughts. And our behavior follows that. And our experience tells us, well, this is true because this is what I believe. Even though no matter how disordered those experiences are and the way we perceive the world of that disordered thought, and that disordered thought system, we continue to believe in it because we think we have to obey that. And so Jesus continues with, this makes them feel responsible for their errors without recognizing that by accepting this responsibility, they are acting irresponsible. Well, because that we're acting irresponsible because we're accepting an irresponsible thought system, and so that causes all irresponsible actions. You think about that, comes from that disordered thought system. Every act that we would call irresponsible comes from that. Behavior follows thought. And so there's nothing, how can we really be that have a sense of responsibility if we're continually choosing a disordered thought system. But we believe we're responsible for it because, remember, as I've mentioned in other videos, guilt demands punishment. So we're responsible for our thoughts, so therefore we're going to find ourselves in situations where we feel like we're being punished. And so we take on that responsibility without recognizing that it's an irresponsible act to continue to follow that thought system. So he continues, if the sole responsibility of the miracle worker is to accept the atonement for himself, and I assure you that it is, then the responsibility for what is atoned for cannot be yours. And so that atonement that Jesus is talking about, which is just the correction of the error, is Jesus telling us, that what is atoned for cannot be yours. The responsibility for what is atoned for cannot be yours. So in other words, we're not responsible for the correction. We're just responsible for choosing that thought system of correction. The Holy Spirit will take care of the rest. That's the Holy Spirit's plan for us, is the atonement. That's the atonement plan. That's not a plan we are responsible for, because we didn't make it up. Because we're choosing our own plan, which is always, really a plan for punishment, a plan for disappointment, because it's all comes from our plans for ourselves, never work out because it's, a plan of that disordered thought. There's nothing we can count on with it. And so we're constantly being disappointed by our plans, hoping they will work out, but rarely, if ever, they do, and they're not lasting anyway. So the Holy Spirit's plan for us, that correction, the atonement, that's the Holy Spirit's responsibility. And so we just have to be willing to be responsible and choose that thought system, that teacher, and that guide. And so the purpose of the atonement is to save the past in purified form only. Meaning, if you think about the past, how does the ego use the past? As a way to remind us, look what you did, look what you're guilty for, look what you should be ashamed for. You're responsible for that. And so the ego's use of that past is always based on guilt, because the whole thought system is the past. And the only way to maintain it is to believe in that guilt, in that past of, look what you did. You've sinned against God. And so the purified form is being able to, my understanding of it is looking at, when we're able to look at those, whatever happened, through the eyes of forgiveness, and look, be willing to look over it, look past it, to see what the real purpose of it is. And we can learn, like, oh, okay, it has no more effect on me now, because I see, at the time, I didn't know any better. So why should I continue to punish myself now? Now I see what I was doing to myself. This is a cause for celebration. Oh, I did do that to myself, and I don't need to punish myself anymore for it, because I recognize that I was responsible for it. And not knowing that at the time, thinking that this was happening to me. No, I was doing it to myself. So now I can see that past as, okay, this is a great lesson for me to learn now. I don't have to continue to do that. And that's looking at it more in a purified form, where it has we've changed the meaning now. It's not a meaning of guilt. Now it's a meaning of for forgiveness. So where am I here? If you accept the remedy for disordered thought, a remedy whose efficacy is beyond doubt, how can its symptoms remain? The remedy is the atonement, the correction of that error. And so the symptoms